Thanks so much for agreeing to
That's
talk.
no worries. Very happy.
Good, good. I won't keep you too long because I know that you're super busy. But yeah, I've sent you the kind of the list of questions, and it'd be great to kind of just understand a little bit more about, your background, a little bit about how you started in STEM, and really, what was it that inspired you to start a career in engineering?
Yeah, so well, I going way back to sort of the beginning of the story, I went to an all-girls school and secondary school, and it was certainly not something really sciences and particularly engineering was not something that was really encouraged that much. I mean, I don't think anyone talked to me about engineering at school, not the careers advisor or anything. My
Yeah,
dad is an engineer, and
right.
so engineering was on the radar for me, but actually, in a way, that put me off wanting to be an engineer because I didn't want to do exactly what my dad was doing. But then we had a stand-in physics teacher once, and he said to me, "You should consider engineering."
Oh,
And because someone else had said that to me, I thought, okay, maybe I should then.
mm,
And I went along to a summer space school at Brunel University in between my A-level years. And it really opened my eyes to the possibilities of what we could do with engineering in a different field.
mm,
And I found it really exciting. And I thought, actually, this is not going to close any doors for me. If I do engineering, it's only going to open doors.
yeah.
And it's done exactly that because I've had the opportunity to work on so many varied projects in my career, which has been amazing. But
Mm.
there have been some challenges as well, being in the minority, and certainly going from an all girls school to an engineering degree course where I was one of less than 10 out of over 100
Really?
students was quite a shock to the system.
I can imagine, yeah. And what were some of those challenges that you've experienced then throughout your career?
I mean, literally the first day I turned up at university in a lecture, and I happened to just sit next to a young guy who was looking through photos of car engines. And I looked over and I was like, "Oh, what are you looking at? That looks interesting." And he looked at me and said, "I think you're in the wrong lecture theatre. English is down the corridor." And that was
No.
the very first lecture of engineering ever. But from that moment, I almost found it a little bit funny because I thought, like, why don't you think I should belong here? I mean, it hadn't. It took a while for it to sink in, like what he actually meant that I'm a girl and I stand out. And I
Mm,
kind of thought, actually, I felt like I needed to prove myself from that point on, that I
yeah,
needed to prove that I was good. And that's kind of been the story of my whole career in a way, in that I felt like there's always been these maybe not overtly expressed questions about my competence, but certainly an undertone of, oh, okay, we weren't expecting you. Let's see what you
mm,
can do then. And
yeah,
that definitely affects your confidence because over time I started to think, actually, do I belong here? Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't, belong in this world that is mainly men. And
yeah.
so it definitely did start to take its toll. But what I found was when I joined the Women's Engineering Society as a member, and all of a sudden I was not in the minority, and there were all these other women around who were also engineers, it
Mm,
definitely gave me a big sense of just sort of more security, more like
yeah,
validation in a way.
yeah, yeah,
So that was that was a big sort of confidence boost for me.
yeah. That's nice. It's a bit like the kind of the psychological safety aspect, isn't it? When you're with more of the people who kind of not your tribe necessarily, but when you're in the minority, but there's a majority,
Yeah,
and there's a group
absolutely.
there.
Yeah, and you're with those other women who don't at all question why you're there.
Yeah,
It's just a given that you're an
yeah,
engineer and you're a woman and you're there because you in other situations, like I worked certainly in my early career, I was mainly the only woman working on projects, and in meetings I would often get confused for being the person who was there to take the notes. People would make comments like, "Oh, it's nice to have something pretty to look at for a change." um, there was an incident where I happened to find out what a co-worker was earning, who was actually a grade below me, but he was paid more than me. And I didn't even feel like I could necessarily speak up about that because it really did. I kind of felt like I didn't want to rock the boat. I wanted to fit in, because otherwise these people would maybe find out that I'm actually not competent.
Yeah.
The fact that I'm being paid less than somebody who's a grade lower than me kind of suggests that maybe I'm less competent.
Yeah.
So it's all these things that undermine your confidence all the way through, and it takes a lot of courage to kind of like it. And it took me probably about 10 years to decide, no, I'm not going to let this affect me. I'm going to just go on and do a good job anyway.
Yeah.
And just focus on doing a good job, and focus on then building other people up, having felt that sort of slow degradation of my own confidence over the years. And now that's why I set up Stemazing, is to really try and empower and support other women to have the courage and confidence to be the best they can be.
Yeah, brilliant. So tell me a bit more about Stemazing then. When did you decide? What was the kind of the build up to that? Because of course you wouldn't have one day thought I'm going to set up this initiative. It must have been quite a bit of a build up. And what was the build up, and what made you decide then to do this? It's your full-time career now, is it?
Yeah. So like you said, it was definitely a gradual build up over the years, starting with me getting more and more involved in the Women's Engineering Society as a volunteer, and then getting on like London Cluster Committee, and then getting onto the board, and feeling like the more and more I do to support other women in this space, the more I feel like I'm actually really making a difference. So much as I love my career in engineering, doing technical projects, I felt like this is where I almost found my calling, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then that combined with my love of doing STEM outreach and inspiring kids through engineering and STEM more broadly. Again, I just absolutely loved that. And I saw an opportunity to bring those two things together, where I could empower women to be more confident, visible role models, which helps them stand up and stand out at work.
Yeah.
And link that to STEM outreach. So that's why I set up Stemazing, but it started off as a bit of a side hustle, like a side project. And I was just doing bits and pieces here and there. And I felt like it was a channel for my energy in that direction. And then during the first lockdown of COVID in the UK, when I was trying to homeschool my two young kids and work and volunteer and do Stemazing, and I just thought, I can't do everything. And I wrote down everything I was doing, and I prioritized it. And the thing that came out on top after my kids was Stemazing. And I thought, okay, I want to focus on this. So I still carried on working for quite a bit longer to make sure I had a bit of financial security. But then I kind of like edged away from my main role, and then ended up leaving that in September last year and focusing full time on Stemazing ever since then.
Right. So since September last year, so nearly a year. And what's happened during that year? Because I see you've got Stemazing Kids, and then you've got Stemazing Women. What happens in both of these kind of channels?
Yes, you're exactly right. Stemazing Women is where I've started off doing some mentoring, and I started off sort of trying to encourage other women to take up speaking gigs and kind of getting them involved in my Stemazing Kids work. And then Stemazing Kids was a separate thing I was running initially during lockdown, where I was just doing online STEM clubs every week, doing a different little STEM activity, just using simple resources people had around the house, because obviously you couldn't really go out. And that ended up being really popular, and people surprised that it worked so well via Zoom, and that the kids were actually really engaged. And then I thought, I want to combine these two things. And then I set up the Stemazing Inspiration Academy, which launched at the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
And so I basically run a program where I train women to be more confident on camera. And then they learn a series of my Stemazing Kids sessions. And then I link them up with primary schools, and they deliver those sessions live. So I've got 45 women in STEM, all different fields of STEM, different countries. I've got a woman in the States, I've got 5 women in Africa, women around Europe, and loads of women all around the UK, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England. And it's all online.
Yeah.
And it's just been brilliant. I mean,
Wow.
getting such good feedback. The schools are loving it because we're able to engage with over 1,000 children, and they all do 6 STEM sessions that are all led by a woman role model.
Mm.
And so yeah, it seems to just kind of like exploded, and I'm loving it. And I'm just hoping that I can keep running that program and grow it and make it bigger and better.
Yeah.
And at the same time, grow other initiatives that I want to do to empower and support women and kids as well. But as it's still just me at the moment, I
Yeah.
can't spread myself too thinly. So I'm hoping to grow and build a team and then be able to do all these things, because there's so much to be done, and
Yeah.
there's so much opportunity to make a difference.
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. So the women, they're just going into schools right now and presenting to current pupils some of the, what is it, around the kind of a career in STEM, or are they giving talks, or how does it work from that side?
So what they're doing is they're delivering Stemazing kids sessions live.
Right.
So these are half-hour interactive hands-on STEM activity sessions targeted at a primary age audience.
Mm-hmm.
So the woman would definitely give a bit of an introduction as to what she does in her career,
Yeah.
but we quickly move on to the hands-on activity. So
Yeah.
they are all science and engineering activities or experiments. And so the kids actually, it's all via Zoom, and the women in STEM is on a big screen in the front of the class.
Right.
And kids all follow along step by step. They can ask questions, they can show their progress, they get to experiment, and they can ask questions at the end. And each of them then has a thing that they've made that they can then take home, talk to their guardians or parents about. And the idea being, we're hoping to continue this conversation about STEM, engage the kids, inspire the kids, reward the kids through STEM, and try and tackle that gender stereotype bias about who or could or should be someone in STEM early, because the research says we have to do it as early as possible, because these gender biases get ingrained so young.
Yeah, yeah. And how does that work then? Is that part of a lesson, or is it done after hours in the school, or is it kind of a one-off guest speaker on the STEM?
So it's a 6-week program, because there's 6 STEM sessions.
Right.
And again, research says that a one-off doesn't really have the level of impact that we want. It needs to be a bit more sort of regularity of seeing women in STEM, so that then they actually click, like, this is an option. Well, the girls think this is an option for me, and the boys think, oh, okay, women do STEM. So it makes them more inclusive. But yeah, so it's a variety of things, and I'm basically flexible based on the women's constraints and the school's constraints. So some schools are doing it in school time as part of a lesson. Some schools are doing it in a lunchtime. Some schools run it as an after school club.
Yeah.
And I just get all their requirements in and kind of match them up with what women can do, and try to, make it work for everyone.
Brilliant. So are you kind of a train the trainer, or do the women who are delivering these sessions over 6 weeks, is there a set program that they follow that you've built, or are they kind of doing it from their own individual STEM topics?
Yeah, it's a set program that I have developed.
Right.
So because of my experience now with doing many, many STEM sessions for kids of that age, and knowing what works well via Zoom, I've basically turned that into a program that all the women are following the same program, but they're all engaging with different schools. So all the school children will get the experience of doing the same 6 activities, but delivered by a different woman in STEM. And so it's basically allows it to be flexible in that each woman can put her own slant on it and her own flair on it and relate examples to her own career and experience. But the activities are the same, because I know they work well, and I know they only require basic resources.
Right. And what age do you start from?
So for my sessions, I was doing from age 5 to 9. Okay. But for the schools, we've mainly focused on age kind of 7 and 8-year-olds, so kind of year 3, year 4 in the UK, because that's worked quite well. But because I've got women internationally working on this, And it's a difficult time because different countries are in different stages of COVID, and it's very challenging to work out what's going to work for a whole variety of different people. So, for example, some of the women in Africa have totally been amazing and thought outside the box and found their own ways of delivering these STEM sessions. So I've got women who are going to run them with their church group children, children from their church sort of community. Another woman's engaging with a summer STEM camp. So it's going to be outside delivering these activities over the summer. Another woman has just basically got a load of people in her community to get their kids involved. So they are ranging all sorts of different ages. And as I've been running the program, I've just basically had to be a lot more flexible than I initially thought, and just thought, you know what, let's just see how this goes and what works, because I never envisaged initially we would be reaching so many different parts of the world with it. So I've got to be a lot more flexible with kind of how it works and see what the result is at the end.
I love the idea of the summer camps. Those, I think there's a real need for that. Have you heard of Kiwi boxes? Have you come across those?
My kids have been doing those for years. They're brilliant.
Mine, I buy one we get a monthly subscription for my daughter. She's 6 now, and she absolutely loves them. She loves doing the Kiwi boxes.
They're great, aren't they?
So important, to get the mind thinking in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So why do you think attracting girls into STEM subjects is such an important matter?
I think to me, it's plainly obvious that in STEM, we are in the business of innovation. We're in the business of basically problem solving, coming up with new ideas to difficult issues. And it doesn't matter what field that is in. It could be in science, in engineering, in technology. And so much research is out there now to say that a key fundamental factor in innovation is diversity. So having people with diverse experiences, perspectives coming together to be able to make that step change in innovation. And what we are lacking, particularly in engineering, is diversity, and gender diversity is a big one because, we have 50% women in the population. We only have 12% women in engineering. So it's obvious to me that we need to do more to try and increase gender diversity, but also all other aspects of diversity. If we're going to serve society in the way that really that is our role to do as engineers and people in STEM. So it's really important that we encourage more girls to see STEM as an option for them. I'm not saying we need to convince everyone that that's the right thing for them, but I think a lot don't even consider it could be an option for them. So opening their eyes to the possibility, and not just girls, but also to show boys that girls can do STEM and are just as good at STEM, because, let's be honest, we do have a problem with inclusion in the sector. So we need to tackle both the recruitment issue of not having enough diversity in the pipeline, but also the retention issue and all the issues around inclusive cultures that actually empower everyone to be their best self at work. And I think role models have a big role to play in that, in supporting both girls to see this is for them and boys to see this is for women as well. So they associate that when they get later on in their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. And what do you see as some positive examples that some companies are taking in order to move the needle to attract more women into STEM?
It's heartwarming to me to see companies putting their money where their mouth is. So I think lots of companies have been saying that equality, diversity, inclusion is important to them. STEM outreach and building the pipeline is important to them, but they have relied on volunteers doing it and people who are passionate about it, who probably are those that have experienced it, like myself, being in the minority, that want to pay it, make a difference and support the next generation coming through. But that's not sustainable, and that doesn't actually show that you really value it. So I think companies who actually do have some resources and invest in these initiatives, in ED&I to support women at work, and also STEM outreach, running work experience weeks, putting effort into actually giving people time as well as money to go and run STEM outreach activities with schools in their community. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is seeing like positive, good examples, seeing people actually properly invest in these initiatives because they're finally realizing it makes business sense to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you also work with organisations?
Yeah, so I work with organizations to support them with mentoring of women, that their female talent that they want to really support and show that they're investing in them.
Yeah.
Organizations also sponsor the Stemazing Inspiration Academy.
Oh, great.
And then the organizations that sponsor, they get a guaranteed number of places for women in their organization or their network on the program.
Yeah.
And some organisations have also, say, for example, sponsored to fund me sending free STEM packs of all the resources to schools who have very low budgets and can't afford it otherwise.
Yeah.
So there's a number of ways that I engage with organisations.
Yeah. Okay, great. And how do you think everybody can get involved from, I think with regards to the influencers such as parents, careers advisors in school. I remember when I was at school, I was never advised or encouraged to, pursue a route down the STEM subject matters. It was never considered. It was more kind of pushing towards the administration type side. Yeah. And they are the role models within those institutions, and they're a really important factor when it comes to, okay, where do we go in life? And of course, parents, sometimes a parent would encourage their child to become a doctor when really their skill set is somewhere completely different. So how do you think everybody can get involved, from the parents to teachers to career advisors, to encourage this?
It's a really good point, because you're completely right. We need to get everybody on board with this, because children are so influenced by their parents, by their teachers, and it's actually criminal to me that careers advisors don't understand enough about the opportunities available in STEM careers. And I think it's just a massive issue that we need to help tackle, but it's one of those things that the awareness is not there. So the awareness of what opportunities are available in STEM is not there for the whole of society. So I think it's a shared responsibility between us in the STEM industry and STEM sectors to do more of being visible role models, telling our story, engaging with people, but also, that has to be supported by industry and organisations, because you can't expect people to just find all these extra hours in the day to volunteer and do it. But I also think that linking up with schools and giving them the conduit into the inspirational role models that can engage with their children in a whole variety of different ways, because I think it's great to give kids the option of, careers events, workshops, talks, but I think for me, to engage young kids, doing something hands-on and interactive is the best way, because them sitting there listening to a talk at the end of the day is not going to be as inspiring as them actually doing it themselves and seeing the amazing satisfaction of having nothing to something that they have created with their own hands. And I think that for me which is why I focused Amazing Kids on primary school. I think that is where we can make a big impact and start the conversation young and encourage parents as well. The great thing about the online clubs I was doing, because they are after school online clubs, they are run from people's homes. So these kids are dialing in from home. They've got a parent somewhere in the background, and the conversation can then continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'd be a good idea to have more talks with, open days with parents, bringing the parents to school to highlight the importance of careers in STEM for females and diverse talent, just to, really help reach a much wider audience.
And as a mother myself, when I talk to other parents about what I do, most of them, I can't even think of one example of anyone who actually knew that my job existed before I started talking to them.
Yeah.
And then when you talk about some of the projects you've been involved with and, what the outcomes are, and then they say, wow, I'd love for my child, my daughter, to understand that that's an option for her and to not feel that she can't do it.
Yeah.
So you're right. We need to engage with the parents as well because they are such big influences. But I think it's that perception, that branding of STEM that we also need to work hard on changing, because people feeling like you have to be a genius, like Einstein, or that it's only for sort of certain elite people, like you've got to go to university or you've got to have the money to do that. It's amazing to me to see people who've come through who are like first generation going to university, or they've come through the apprenticeship route and earned money while they've learnt, and in these incredible jobs making a difference. And you don't have to be a maths and science genius, but it's almost like a bit elitist sometimes. I feel that people want it to be projected like you have to be super intelligent, and actually I disagree with that. I think there's lots of opportunities for everyone at every level to get into STEM and add value in their own way.
Everything can be taught, it's whether people have got the skill and the aptitude, but it can be taught. And whether it's not necessarily going down the engineering route, it could be somebody who's gone down a analyst route who has an interest in engineering and then channels back into that route through things like diverse training programs, like apprenticeship programs, that then allow them to do that. That's really good. And finally, what's next for Stemazing, and how can people get involved?
Well, so what's next for Stemazing? I'm just finishing. We're in the last month of the Stemazing Inspiration Academy, so where all the women are finishing doing their STEM sessions to all the kids. After that, I'm planning to open up for a second round so people can get involved. They can register their interest through my website. They can sponsor to support to allow me to engage more women and therefore more schools. And I'm also planning to later on this year launch a membership for women in STEM, because I've just seen the demand for that empowerment and that support for women in STEM, and linking it into the STEM inspiration piece. So I'm going to open up a membership that allows, whoever, not just restricted to the Inspiration Academy, but whoever wants to join and get involved. And again, that will all be online. And move my Stemazing Kids sort of regular after school club, again, more online to a membership style thing, so that people can sign up and join when they want and leave when they want. They're not committed to a certain program. So lots of things in the pipeline, lots of things I'm excited about.
I think that's a really good idea on the membership side, because oftentimes you'll see something that you want to register for, or you want to register your kids for, but it's just not the right time for you. Regardless, I have my daughter. My sister signed her up to an arts class on a Saturday, but it's afternoon. And a lot of the time it's kind of, okay, let's get out, let's go to the park, because we've been in and whole lockdown, blah blah blah. So she misses out on that. So if there's an opportunity to do something that's pre-recorded, and they still get all of the access and the learnings and the interaction, then I think that's a really good idea.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. It's been really nice to talk to you.